Sometimes attacks are swift and violent, and sometimes they are slow rolling. Today we're going to see a slow rolling attack that is sort of inevitable, unpreventable. So what are the conditions where this happens? This is what we're going to look at today with two minor pieces versus a rook, where the big Danish talent Jonas Bjerre shows some real serious skills for handling this kind of attack. It's not easy, but it's worth looking at and worth learning, because it is a rather nice skill to have, being able to see that, okay, my attack will not land immediately, but it will land, and he cannot prevent it. He's playing against the strong Hungarian grandmaster Tamas Banusz, very solid seasoned player, 26-31 or something, and it was very important game for Jonas, because this shows that he is on his right track again after having had some very unpleasant months with bad results at the Kramnik Challenge and so on. So I think it gave him a lot of self-confidence. Okay, without further ado, let's get on with the game. It's the Petrov opening, or the Russian as it's called in Danish, and Jonas is white, and it was probably not a big surprise that Banusz plays the Petrov. He has done that a lot, and it's kind of an easy opening to play for black. You just take the pawn on e4, get rid of it, have a symmetrical position, and if white does not play very energetically, then you will be able to equalize rather effortless. This bishop d6 is the most aggressive line for black. I think Kramnik plays bishop e7 or knight c6 or something, and that was the old main line. Bishop d6 is at the moment the current main line, and c takes d5 was, when I studied this as a young man, this was the main line. There was a lot of theory discussion, so I know a little bit about this. I've been studying before the engines. Can you imagine that? Before the engines, I was studying this for white and couldn't find an advantage, actually. But I think the main line here is probably knight c3 first. Knight c3. And in a book by, I think, Dopade or something, an Indian grandmaster on this opening, he recommends the move Rook e8 here. And I think that is the best move. Why exchange this a great knight on e4 for this knight on c3? But this was the main line when everybody was studying this, and this pin is rather annoying, actually. It's really nice to get rid of it, and you don't want to play this, because then you lose all sense of initiative. So you have to just say, okay, I will have to accept and find a way to exploit the absence of the bishop on the queen side. So in that respect, rook b1 is very, very logical, hitting the pawn on b7. Knight d7, and this is one of the tricks. You can't really take it, because if you take, we just show the line, knight d7, and this rook is in trouble. It's gonna be trapped. So instead, just play a3, hitting the bishop. And often it's a good idea to hit the bishop and making sure there's no bishop take h2 check. And the idea of luring the bishop to h5 could be to play g4, but that's very weakening. But it's also with this point, and you're having an x-ray effect on the bishop from the rook from the side, and at the same time attacking d5. This was the main line. Knight b6 makes a lot of sense. If you go to f6, you could probably take on b7. So closing up the b file and defending the pawn on d5 all looks very, very nice and normal, and black is rather comfortable. And then comes c4, and that makes a lot of sense. We are not doing this for fun. And also it threatens c5, so black has to do something. When I was studying this many years ago, I remember the main line was something like this, and I thought this was should be good for white, but I couldn't find an advantage anywhere. It's not so easy. Black's pieces are rather good. White can easily get clumsy, and this pawn can be strong. So, but this is the main line, and I guess Jonas had found something he liked for white here, and I think engines today favor white, who has the bishop pair. But back then, when there was no engines, I couldn't find an advantage for white. But here, Banusz places, and maybe it was preparation, or maybe he just Didn't know, but it is actually some sort of a sacrifice because white can take d5, and after this normal pin, um, white can take with the knight on h2, and so threatening here. And after queen takes, bishop takes e4 with a double attack on d5 and h5. Uh, White gets, and black will take this, get two minor pieces for rook. And what to think of that? Okay, here are the golden rule. If white can get these two minor pieces to attack something, especially the black king, it will have too few defenders because rooks are not great defenders. They are a little bit like tanks in the Second World War. They're supposed to roll over the Soviet Union, but not standing somewhere just waiting for something to happen. And so the rooks are not that great defenders. And the minor pieces will be able to launch a very effective attacks if they are allowed to. But at the moment, we see that black's kingside is absolutely without weaknesses. So it will take some time to get an attack going against this king side. If you don't get an attack, then the rooks are fine, and in the ending, it might even be better to have a rook and pawn versus two minor pieces because the rook is very effective when there's not much, with a lot of open files and lines and so on. Anyway, this position is clearly better for white. But you have to believe in the attack. Queen c4, knight h4, very strong move. Knight here is what I think Ogre would call into the kill zone, where it's close to the king, and suddenly all kind of threats might appear out of nowhere. So that's unpleasant. And already black is, and you don't want to play g6 because that weakens the dark square fatally. You have a very strong guy sitting here on c1 that can do some serious damage on the black squares. So f6 makes some sort of sense. Knight f5, trying to get defending here. Rook fd8, and we notice that one of the black's defensive ideas is to have the queen very centralized, so it keeps this queen from sort of entering the attacking sphere. This queen would love to threaten mate on d7. For instance, if it could do it on this square, then it will already be big problem for black because rook d7, knight h6 is winning an exchange back, and then you're just a piece up. So, but at the moment he would just exchange it, and then the ending would be good for black. Let's just see that. So something like this, threatening mate here, and black takes here, and these two rooks are and a pawn are at least as good as the opposite of the two minor pieces here. So don't exchange queens when you have the two minor pieces. And if you have the rooks, exchange queens. That's the golden rule. Okay, so Jonas has to be careful. Queen f3, and we see that this pawn is hanging, and Jonas does not care. It doesn't matter with the pawn. He's not after pawns. He's after the king. He has to go after the king, and he has to believe that at the moment there's no attack, but there will be an attack because he has more firepower than black, who has two rooks. So it's just a question of getting these pieces organized to attack. And of course, you would love to have the rook going, so it opens, goes into the open file here. And if black takes the pawn, at least now he has two pawns, and he has two passed pawns on the queen side. So an ending now would be a total disaster for white. He would definitely lose or have big troubles or trying to find a perpetual check. So it's all or nothing now. But white does have a strong attack. He's already taking over some squares deep in white's camp here. The pawn, the square e7. Black is trying to get his finding a way to safeguard his king, but there is no, and this is the thing of slow rolling attack or inevitable attacks. They will land in the end. You can do what black can do whatever he likes. If he doesn't get the queen exchange, the attack will land. H4, typical idea, moving it up the board to trying to weaken black's structure. Bishop e7, and here we already see that it's threatened the rook here, but it's also threatened this move probably, and with a big attack. Queen d2, attacking the rook, counter-attacking, so it has to go. Check, king h2. It was nice to have a safe king. That's also where some of the counterplay might come, that you suddenly can give a check, for instance, here or something. But at the moment, everything is well guarded. You cannot play rook e8, then bishop takes f6 is a problem, I think. So rook g8, h5, going on with the attack. And we see that even though black only played f6, these squares are already very weak. h6, preventing any further damage, but we already see that g7 is in trouble. Knight h4, and there's also some white squares now. There might be a check here and queen somewhere. Queen f5, hitting the rook here. Rook d1, threatening to give a check. Maybe it's a problem, maybe it's not. So, but why not stop it? Defending here, and we see that, of course, it's much more effective if these two pieces had their roles reversed in this position. Reversed. It's better with the queen in front. The queen has also diagonal checks. Queen d5. Okay, the queen got back to the rescue. Is it enough? And here black has a great move to get rid of the queen from this position, because you don't want the queen hanging around there where it can take on h5, give a check, or disturb the attack. You want to get rid of it. And how do you do that? Little combo, check, rook e5, attacking the queen. Of course, it's pinned, so you can't really take here due to this queen tag, and you can't take it here due to the check on g6. So the queen will have to goes back, c1. That was not the plan. Bishop takes f6. Already bad things are happening. You can't take it, then you're mated, and you can look at that yourself. But check, check, and the rook will come with check, and it will be mate. Eventually, you will sort of zigzag into black's king's position. Rook e1, trying to exchange, and it doesn't help. Of course, you could just move the rook. It doesn't change much, but Jonas just plays this, and here he plays this move, and black resigned. There's absolutely nothing to do here. He's basically totally lost. You can play king h7, then comes queen f5 and knight g6, knight f8, and queen h7 mate. So this was a great game and very instructive game by a 17-year-old Jonas Bjerre, who also qualified for the World Cup at the European Championship. So a major breakthrough, not as much as Vincent Keimer, who did fantastically and was joined first, second on Buchholz, but in general, this was a great tournament for Jonas, and it shows that he will be a very strong player in the future. If it's 2680 or 2720 or 2780, I don't know, but he will be very strong for sure. This was GM Talks. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something, and of course had a great time watching. Thank you.